Sorry?
You're probably all meetinged out.
Always. Somebody said something about pizza tonight, so I come around.
That's why you're here. I need to go find some aspirin. I got a headache.
I take up the center myself.
Okay, what does, do you have a copy of the exhibit C?
And the other isn't,
Hey. Well,
There you go.
you're all right. It's in the bottom. of the
Well,
bag.
it's not that bad.
Oh, yes, it is.
I've got two of them. For some reason I got two of these. I don't know if I got my,
There was.
you know where there's any aspirin there?
I don't know if we have any here. I would ask Michelle, she might have
I've got
one.
so much right.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
It's a deep subject though.
we'd like them to be deeper, but since you brought that up.
Well,
Yeah. How are you, Jerry?
what's up, big guy? Hi, Jerry.
Evening.
Mind your seat.
Oh, I'm down here. Oh, good. Odd man out. I should have stayed home on my thing again.
That's good. See, the band really showed it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's at the bottom of the email somewhere I got to it.
right, it's the drawing,
Correct.
and that shows the easement.
Is that what you're looking for?
No,
Oh,
we're looking for a document that says, we're gonna grant her joint access with us to the BLM property.
no.
That's not in this.
Turn it into a requirement.
We can't grant
Yeah,
that.
exactly. We just don't do
The
that.
BLM is the only one that can do that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how. Mr. Beddoes is the only one that's never made an error on one of these, so being an
Good God.
experience for
You know, you'll go to help the line just as quick as you will for Steven.
I'd throw that out. It's so simple, but yet so complicated.
So we don't get so hard.
Scottsdale, a couple weeks ago, playing a golf tournament at the TPC down there.
Oh, shut up.
I'm playing with this
For real?
football guy from the Jets. I hit like, we're on the practice green, I hit like 10 or 12 chip shots, and I didn't miss more than this much from 30 yards. He goes, man, you make that look so easy. I said, no, you just make it look so hard.
That's funny. I'm jealous. I've heard that course, that TPC course is just amazing.
It's in immaculate condition.
Ah, I'm so jealous. I gotta go get my cord.
Well,
Joe, can I borrow that blue highlighter up there, please? Thank you.
Do you need a pen?
No, just can borrow highlighter. Rod is, oh,
You got the full right here.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Not me.
Hey, Brad, how are you?
Oh, good.
Dale.
we talked on.
We're talking about plenty of time.
Water.
Nice to meet you.
Water, is there any water I can get?
Meet you.
I don't know, back there, I guess.
Mark taking care of.
Or do they have water out the fridge or?
Yeah.
I didn't recognize you.
I take it off.
Jerry, George. I'm sure. Oh, wow. Yeah. So he can get hooked up to it. Yeah, he's still not.
This might be the only one.
Oh, no, we know. We are.
Zach.
That's anything.
That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is.
Hey, well, hello, Mr. Toast. Come on down to South Oklahoma, yourself a little high five.
South Oklahoma.
How we doing? Gonna mark that you're here.
Okay. I get in to read?
Absolutely. Thank your feet. It's for me.
Yeah, what do you want? This one?
Hey, you have to get someone with a smart text.
Taylor, I'm the mayor's daughter.
I,
On the east.
Oh, nice.
This.
I know you can be in the corner,
Yeah.
see, not anymore.
Within 18 months.
Oh, that's awesome.
Things get located
Right. Oh, that's so cool. Right, right. Yeah, she's my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I screwed up,
We haven't got one.
when I did.
The older is my dad.
We did it because I touched my hands up.
Oh, did you?
Oh,
Oh,
So I was telling Brent on that conference day, Oklahoma,
Yeah, yeah, I guess it's, you know.
and back in the seventies, or back in the nineties, everything was being developed around it. So down for some reason, it was getting growth like 1%.
Got my hat.
So they came up with this marketing strategy to bring attention.
I forgot his name again, Jerry Jorgensen.
Yeah, that's right.
This slogan, and all the radio
This is a new
stations,
member.
they said, come on down to Oklahoma.
Cool.
I live on the old warehouse.
In the old one.
I'm not even-
Because I'm the one that grades all the roads, the dirt roads. Everybody.
I'm not even sure, I think I am.
Mr. Barrett. How are you? Nice to meet you. We nicknamed him Cowboy. Nice to be a new member of your community. About the Steve Ward Castle House.
Oh, yeah, how
you doing?
Harold Barrett?
Mike Barrett.
You mean the,
We can mix those names up.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
you mean the Flintstone house? Pleasure.
You know, when you talk to someone for a long time, you can talk. Yeah, it was kind of like years ago.
How are you? We talked a little bit on the phone. Right. You gotta have one car down here.
Yeah.
No, let me be careful. I just want to show you. This is the previous one.
On the floor, right? Or we
All red.
She never gave it to you.
Yeah, you got it.
No, I never seen it on my first.
I think that has on his hat or his
I
hair.
sent it, I scanned it and sent this out.
I don't know.
Oh, maybe it's like that.
Yeah, we're desperately need a lot of help on that end of it, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. You never, I've talked
Well,
about
I
that.
don't have to get in trouble, but I've been to
Yeah.
plenty of training
Can't, you
sessions, so
know,
I
you gotta let me
I have a
know.
little bit.
Yeah.
That's not all there.
I'm gonna get wild in a hurry. Tell me what I would have made.
What's the name of here?
I like that.
Barely standing after the.
What's the name of here?
Hope you see that.
Oh, from Jerry.
Rod and I had too much fun this afternoon.
Yeah. Hey, did you see that thing I sent you guys? I don't know if that's the ECR at all, but I
Maybe you
found out.
gotta look at your water.
Thing, I saw that.
All the,
That's even. I didn't even know.
yeah.
I didn't even know that's,
Oh, boy.
that's what you were kind of looking for.
Where is the,
We'll get the gloves out here in a while.
When I just didn't. know it.
Yeah,
so you got the house up by the road and the house in the back?
No, I bought the one right near the road. Yeah, with all the corn hard, contour group.
Right plus the house.
Mike,
Sammy does.
Mike Gross.
Where is the easement right away?
Let's go here from Mike to Bun, that's when.
There's,
35 or 3.5 hours out of the drive.
Yeah. And she said,
no, the water rights with claim deed.
That little drawing right there.
yeah, I really.
Where's the, that's the exhibit, where's the Right away.
We just surveyed, and so I've got the second one, five, and that's being prepared to feed by Lanny Talent. There's a bigger one.
Okay,
There's a third
that's
one.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that maybe.
Probably should get it, see it soon, maybe they'll-
Yeah.
Is Ross coming?
Yeah, I called him yesterday. Make sure he was here.
I don't want
I see the map fine, I'm looking for the.
no legal yet.
All right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Big Plains Water and Sewer Special Service District. If you please stand, we'll pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Harold Merritt is present.
Jerry Jorgensen present.
Marty, Elizabeth present.
Dale Meadow present.
I anticipate Ross Gregerson, but he is absent at the present time. Any conflict of interest that anybody wants to declare at this point?
No.
I was accused of having a conflict of interest by some public members because I know Mr. Tuttle, the engineer for the applicant. Mr. Tuttle is also my engineer for my projects. I don't believe it to be a conflict just because I know him. I know Lucifer and I know the Savior, and I think I'm still getting into heaven, so. I don't declare a conflict, but it has been brought to my attention, so I do want to clarify that,
We'll note that clarification.
Thank you. Especially the part about the Savior and Lucifer.
Yeah.
More than I know both.
What does Lucifer look like? I just wondered.
You got mirrors?
He worked it out with that.
Oh, God.
Okay, we'll have the minutes from, need to approve the minutes. From the Big Plains meeting minutes from October 1st, 2020. And I've read those in the meeting minutes from August 6th, 2020.
Are we doing these individually?
I was gonna do them together, if everybody's, we can do them individually.
Okay, well, just on item 2, the minutes from August 6th, and it has an error in that, and that's page 3 of 5. Water System Master Plan, it has Mayor Elizabeth I, and I wasn't at that meeting, and I think that's supposed to be Chairman Barrett I, because you were the only 3 in that meeting for that. So it's just, I would just say that we need to, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Page 3 of 5, it's page 8. You look at the page numbering. And it says Chairman Merritt called for a vote, but you don't have a vote there. And I wasn't at the meeting at all. And so that's the only correction I saw in that. Was that so we'll, because I wasn't at any of these meetings, I will abstain from the vote as well, because I wasn't the 2 meetings I missed. Anyway. So subject to.
Okay, I evidently voted A and you got credit for it.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, anything else? Whenever everybody's ready and somebody make a motion.
Actually, I should correct that each one of those actually has the wrong one, so 7, 8. So we'll just have to go through and edit that one item where it says Mayor Elizabeth on that meeting. Should all be corrected to Chairman Merritt. And so we'll make that change. So if we could. But it's okay.
Okay, that's the August 6th meeting. No corrections. Jerry, you okay with minutes, are you still working on?
No, I just looking at, yeah, I'm good.
And actually Jerry was, missing too, thinking about it. You weren't even on the board for those meetings, so I'm not even sure
I was on,
it's appropriate to even, just-
I'm here on, these first
In August?
3.
Yeah, you are on the first one, not on the second one.
Yeah, the
Yes,
third.
you wrote on the first one.
Yeah, I wasn't on
In October.
I wasn't there either.
Well, I'll do this. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes, with those changes that I mentioned for, October 1st, 2020 and August 6th, 2020. I was not at those meetings, but I have watched the meetings on YouTube and I'm familiar with what's happened. And, so I'll go ahead and make that motion subject to the changes that we correct, that voting on the August 6th version of it to reflect Harold Maris, the mayor.
I'll second that.
Vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Financial report, John Barlow. You here, John, or
Yes, I'm here, Chairman.
did anything you wanted to?
The check registry is there. It's on page 11 and 12. I just recommend the board scan that, and if anything pops out, then let me know. And then we can take how much do you want to dive into the financial report? I can make it as in-depth or as quick as you'd like. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're just,
Oh, okay.
well, I've gone over the financial report and, I didn't have any, nothing really jumped out at me that was a problem. I moved that we, approve the financial report for the January invoice registry and the financial statements as submitted.
Before we go a second, could I just clarification, who is Repco leasing?
That's the,
the.
for the printer company.
I'll second.
Vote? Jerry?
Oh, aye.
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 Okay. Appreciate that. We'll move on to staff. Dale Harris, did you share with us what we need to know about the functioning of the water?
The biggest thing is some recent water modeling was done on both of the systems. And we have big concerns on both systems. So,
To specify, you mean Apple Valley and Cedar Point?
correct. The Apple Valley system and the Cedar Point system. The Cedar Point system, we are source deficient with the new water modeling that went on, which the state did not recommend that we move forward on. So my suggestion would be is that this is real over in Cedar Point. What we're not producing for the homes that we have over there currently right now. And I would like to stop issuing will serve permits in Cedar Point because we would be selling water that we actually don't have. We should honor the will serve letters that we have already got in place. But going forward, we need another source over in Cedar Point before we can be issuing will serve permits. In the state's eyes, we are undersourced in Cedar Point. On the Apple Valley side, we're plenty of source, but we don't have any storage. Some recent modeling that was done on another project showed that we're deficient, and the state didn't approve that project either. because we're at our limit on capacity for what we have with the building that we have in town right now.
Storage capacity.
Correct. Like I say, source, we're good on source. Our storage capacity, as we all know in this room, we're at 440,000 gallons is all we have, and we are deficient. So I don't think that that's a big thing to anybody in this room. We've all known that any development coming in has to bring that storage. So I don't think that's anything new to anybody in this room. We can't be issuing those will serve permits and going forward without safely operating our system. We will get a significant deficiency from the state. We can be cut off from funding programs. Our system can be unapproved. So that would be my recommendation to the board, is that we stop issuing will serve permits until we've got our storage capacity in line on the Apple Valley system, and that we have our source in line for Cedar Point.
Line, so your solution for the Cedar Point is the line over from the springs?
Correct. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Harold did some talking with Jerry Eads, and Jerry gave us some information on wells of what they were supposedly doing when he had the system. So I wanted to put that out there, but I also want to say I've been running this system for 8 years, and the numbers that were given to us, were shown to us that was supposed to be going on in Cedar Point just aren't realistic. They might have happened on test pumps under Jerry's watch, but none of these wells have ever produced, actually putting into the system what they've shown on paper that they're supposed to be producing. And that, folks, has happened since day one. When we took this system over, we had 47 homes over in Cedar Point, and we had 23 gallons a minute was all we could produce over in Cedar Point. And really at that time, we should have stopped building, because we should have been producing at least 36 gallons a minute at the time. Since then, we are up to 100 homes in Cedar Point and still going at it. We rehabbed 59. 59 drops 20 feet on its static. We lost close to about 50 gallons a minute, 45 gallons a minute with that. Because the aquifer is finicky. So I can't pump it too high, or I pick up all of the iron algae that's in the system, and then people have got the color of Jerry's shirt running in the system. And if I pump too fast, I'm putting air into the system, and the water ends up looking like 2% milk. So I can only get 45 gallons a minute out of that one, and I can only get 35 gallons a minute out of the cook well. Harold and I have talked about this. We do have other sources in Cedar Point, but I'd like to point out is that we have struggled with those wells ever since. And our actual quality of water for human consumption, we pass all of our tests. Aesthetically, that water, it just sucks. There's no polite way to put it. It's red. I get complaints a couple of times a month of the water over there. It's impossible to keep it out of the line because it's what I'm pumping out of the ground. So that is why we need that Canaan line over there. We need to realize that thing produces, 52 to 55 million gallons annually, and we're sending a bunch of that just down the road. We need to get that where we can actually use that water. My feeling is we're just throwing money literally in the ground if we keep trying to poke holes in Cedar Point, because I think we've already done that enough to show that is what we're going to get. That is what the aquifer has to offer over there. Frank is 600 plus feet in the ground. He's not getting any of this iron algae. With the Jessup well, we're sitting on, correct me if I'm wrong, we're on the Triassic level, and we're sitting right on rock. We need a bunch of money to even get through that, to get that depth. And I'm just using the Jessup well as that comparison. But
How deep are those wells?
Say that again, please.
The wells that you're talking about, how deep are they?
We're on an average of about 400 to average amount, give or take, 20, 30 feet, but that would be a good average. But using the Jessup well as that example, we put a new pump, new control and everything, and we're pumping oil out of that thing now. But I've disconnected it from the system, and it's not being pumped at all into the system anymore. And I've tried to get the thing to go. It seems like, especially with that Jessup well, the more we toy with it, it seems like the worse that it gets. Like I say with 59, what a great performer out of the chute, 110 gallons a minute or so that we were test pumped at. As soon as we took off, I was able to rock that thing out at 85 gallons a minute. But we cleared everything that aquifer could clear, and then it showed me in due time. I mean, cops were the first one that called me. Debbie and Rich called me within 40 days after the week and said, what is coming out of my faucet? And I go over and big old shots of air coming out, and it looked just like 2% milk. I'm at the bottom of that. I'm at the bottom of that sucking well. That's just where we're at, folks. And you know, if we were going to cross this bridge at some point, this is just when we're crossing it. And we just got to act accordingly.
My question was, the pipeline open springs to make on a tank, is that the solution that you're looking for?
Yes, I just wanted to elaborate why the wells weren't the solution.
So you want us to halt any more building permits until that line is in, if we're addressing this.
Not building permits. I'm saying will serve letters.
It's the same thing,
Exactly.
because you can't get a building permit without a will serve letter, so it's basically the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
And then to discuss this a little bit more with the board, I agree with Dale. We talked at length about this and toured the wells and options, and Dale's talked to all the old folks from this neck of the woods, and so have I, and I don't see any option other than protect ourselves by not issuing will serve letters. They're pouring concrete every day almost for in Cedar Point, and we're gonna, all of a sudden, we're gonna be stuck in there, and somebody's gonna say, well, you know, who was asleep at the switch 6 months ago?
Say Dale.
But they
Or
are,
that Dale. Okay. Make sure you say Harrison.
Yeah. Anyway,
How many current connections are out there?
100 is what we have right now, and we have 9. We have 18 will serve letters that still haven't gotten connections that have gone out.
Can you carry those 18?
Honestly, no, we shouldn't have been issuing
Well,
any.
but we have.
Okay,
But we
that was
have
my
to.
point. The point is we've issued, can you carry it?
Exactly.
A lot
We're
of
gonna
those-
have to.
we're grandfathered in from years ago.
Exactly. We're gonna have to. And when my sanitary survey comes, it's just gonna have to be what it is for now.
Okay.
I've been in lengthy conversations with the state, many of them over the last couple of weeks, to find out exactly what our options here are. And our options is that we were taxed. And just like I said, we can't build homes that we can't supply water to.
Okay.
Yeah, so my thought is, and be certainly open to suggestions, is that we're out over our skis now, and it's gonna get worse if we don't just slow it down for 6 months or 8 months or whatever it takes to get that pipeline in, and then we're golden again, and rather than get some problems. Any thoughts on it?
Well, just, you know, I presented an idea and I haven't heard feedback on it yet. So what's the chances of coming up with a lease agreement with Frank?
I did give you my answer on that. We have to own that well.
Not according to all the sources I've talked to, that everybody I've talked to says, no lease agreement works. You
No,
don't have to own it.
we
You
have
buy the
to,
water from
it's a
them.
public water system. Paul Wright, you can contact him, who is the state
I'll call
engineer.
him. I'll call him, because I've worked with, I was talking to Sunrise Engineering and others that have some know on this. One of them was our attorney for town. Says, no, you don't have to own it. You can buy it. You have to test it. You have to take it over, and you have to make sure that it's culinary, and you have to, he's making it sound like it's a piece of cake to do that. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't do it that way.
I assure you that it's not.
So,
It's a public water system, and it has to meet all of the standards of the Clean Water Act.
oh,
period.
there's no doubt we have to meet all the standards. That's a given. I'm not suggesting otherwise.
The only question is, do we have to own it?
Yes, we have to take that well over. Paul's exact words are, is we have to treat that exactly like any other source that we own.
But you asked him on a lease, that if we lease that, we have complete control of that, that's not acceptable to him? Is that what you're saying?
No, because we're still allowing, like, he's got water rights that are actually in that well. We would have to take that well over. Now that has become a public water system, and Frank would actually have to buy his water back from us. We would have to make sure that that was public water standard. It would have to be fenced off just like the rest of ours, and Frank would not have access to that. With that said, I talked to Frank 6-7 years ago, because Rick Moser brought this. And I told Frank exactly this is what the state would expect, and Frank said no.
I don't blame him.
Okay, well, you can check on that.
I trust Dale's judgment on it, and that's probably what I'm gonna find out.
I think the worst thing that could happen.
And
is
I want
just-
to put the thing is, if I am wrong on that, I'm more than willing to do that.
Sometimes it's how you word things, and I'm just gonna word it the way I would want to, that we got a problem and here might be a solution. Doesn't sound like this can be fixed if, given the parameters that we've tested and we, fenced it and we've done whatever. It could be a Band-Aid that gives us water into that system in 30 days instead of 6 months while we do the other thing. And then we hand it back to them after we make him whole again afterwards.
I said that all to Paul.
So, and it could be that there's no way to do it.
And like I said, if there is, we should.
Anyway, I'll ask some questions and it could be that I get the same answers, but so I appreciate you looking into it.
Yeah, the worst case scenario is just be upfront with people and tell them that we can't issue a will serve letter for 6 months or something like that. And if they haven't got their house started and they haven't got framing in the air, they should be able to, it would be inconvenient probably, but there shouldn't be any real collateral damage versus letting the house half built and all of a sudden we run totally out of water.
Well, I would tend to agree a little bit more with Dale's direction that there are 18 issues out there, well served letters issued right now that we can absorb. It's not fun, it's not easy, but we can absorb. If we go this route, I think we just have to stop after the 18 and just say, let's put a moratorium on it until we get the pipeline in.
We can check this out with Frank and see where it goes, and other than that,
Well, I'll ask him a couple of questions, but it could be I get nowhere, so.
Okay, very good. Anything else, Dale?
No, everything, I'm kind of going off of what Rod's got going on, so yeah, I'm good.
Okay, there's, before we get to Rod, because he'll be, ask a bunch of questions about, Ed, did you want to talk about Hank's project this evening a little?
Oh, I don't know, I got the paperwork on it, really. So I'll have to go off of memory. I just wanted to, the one thing that I was curious about, I didn't call him yet, but he had down here in 3.01 that he wanted to within 18 months. Now within means he could start it right away, and it could be that he waits till 18 months, but I'm wondering why we would want him to wait at all. Given that the Apple Valley system is low on storage anyway, why would we allow him to open up anything across the way without some?
Can I comment on that, Marty?
Yeah.
So I got that email, and if I would have read the email while having the conversation with Hank about that 1.5 years, I would have told him the 1.5 years was off, because the email that I got told me that we were under capacity, and I would have looked at him and said, 1 million gallons, got to have it right now, because you're exactly right. We can't without having that storage.
And that's why he wanted to build the temporary tank, was for expedience and providing his system. I don't know how much longer it takes to build a 1 million gallon tank compared to a 300,000 or 400,000 gallon tank, but I don't understand what the big deal is. This is funded by a PID, which is Public Infrastructure, District. And so basically it's, public money, so to speak, that is funding this project. It's not out of this. He's not writing a check himself out of it. And it just seemed like that would be the first thing we'd want him to start, is that 1 million gallon tank, so that when he's ready to start renting out teepees or whatever the first part of his project is, that we have the extra capacity right at that time. Does that sound like the direction we would want to go?
Well, I think also, and I'm gonna speak from council position now, we also allowed the applicant in the development portion to increase his PID funds by 3 mil, I think it was. Which generates another $1.3 million, I think, ballpark range. So he's adequately funded.
That leaves him.
And beyond what his requirement was, we let him go beyond his requirement to borrow, so he's adequately funded to put in the tank. I'm opposed to any type of singular type development of infrastructure that only serves one individual.
Credits back.
And if it doesn't,
But we don't want to him to
if
say,
the
well,
dollars are spent to
$500,000.
serve the entire
We
community,
should say it's
it's
$1 million gallons.
more of a island type project, and I'm not a big fan of those type of island type projects. I think the infrastructure needs to be spent one time, the money needs to be spent one time, and needs to benefit the whole, not the individual. So I'm speaking that as a council member, and that's what concerns me. So I think it's necessary. Our town needs, as you just earlier stated, we're under capacity now. I know there's a swimming pool where you can get some water, but that's not enough water storage. So
That's salt water, you don't want to drink that.
so it's pea water, what it is. So,
All right, well,
I just think we need to push for a million gallon tank. It needs to go up.
I agree.
That's my opinion.
I agree.
so, apologize for the sidebar that, Harold Barrett and I were having in the middle of some conversation. Basically, he's pointing out, I am in, also in 3.01, water facilities, it talks about if the SSD requires water tank to have capacity in excess of what is needed to service the project exclusively, the SSD shall provide developer a credit against impact fees applicable to the project in the amount equal to the difference between the cost of construction of water tank and the minimum capacity required to service the project. So basically, in a nutshell, we're saying that if we only need 500,000 gallons for a project, and we're having him build a 1 million gallon tank, then we're responsible for the other 500,000 gallons.
And we don't know exactly without the master plan how much it's gonna need, so that's why I'm saying that.
Well, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but, some of the conversation we've had on this, through the PID, part of this project was that we would, have to do a credit, because it's true that we would have to pay for that other 500,000 gallons. But the method of payment might be a reduction in those impact fees, not a reduction. Let me state that there will be no reduction in the impact fees. But we would take, say, the impact fee is still the $12,000. We would take, whatever we decide on, it could be 3 or 3 or 4,000. We'd take $3,000 or $4,000 of each impact fee or the equivalent credit, and we would pay that money towards the PID. In other words, we're not gonna put the money in Hank's pocket. It's gonna go back to the PID because the PID is what paid for it anyway. And so we'd be paying that back towards the people that are responsible for paying that, which is each of the landowners. If that makes sense. So,
Yeah, so what we'll end up with is a 1 million gallon tank, and then we'll work through the payment end of it.
right, and then we would have a reduction. So let's say that you've got 3,000 or 4,000 times, let's just use easy numbers, $500,000. And so it might take a couple of 100 homes, then we're even Steven on that. We don't have to start reimbursing. So we're getting a reduction. So basically we are paying for it by reducing how much we're taking in, but we're also, we have tank, and so anyway, that's kind of how that would work.
I have a question for Mr. Tuttle, who's the engineer for that applicant. Have you performed that water model yet on the entire project?
Yeah.
Okay. This goes back,
I'm just running through the numbers though, that this state requirements 400 gallons per day for connection, and I can't remember, we got 400 connections, so
300, 300 plus commercial.
Well, there's 20 additional homes, I think, and then
It's
there's
actually 800 gallons
commercial
demand per day.
Okay. And this goes back to what we talked about last month when we said, we're kind of putting the horse before the cart. This is a question that needs to be answered at preliminary plat application when the water model is discussed and identified, I should say, at that time. So the demands identified through that process, yet it makes it challenging, of course, going to an agreement like this, an amendment ahead of that process, because we're agreeing to a 500,000 gallon tank, and we don't know what the demand is, so
Yeah, but it's,
I keep saying.
it's a chicken and the egg thing, and here's the deal,
What
is
is it?
without this agreement somewhat in place, we don't wanna do a PID, but if we can't do a PID, and he can't get the PID, it completely changes his ability to move forward with the engineering, because the PID is gonna help pay for that engineering.
Right, and in our last meeting, Dale got a better memory than you and I, because he's younger than you and I.
Yeah.
By 4 months or 4 weeks or something like that, so, you know, we talked about this, and having the applicant go ahead and do a water model study for that over there. And require that of the applicant before we get to this stage. I agree that this unfortunately needs to go ahead. I don't.
Well, we wanna make sure language is right, you know, so you're right there.
But we're gonna need that water model sooner than later. It would make it'd make it just a lot easier for us to execute this grant with your applicant and have that water model.
And this are the only concerns that I have, and I'll just leave that with you to.
Yeah, I agree with you. And,
You understand what we're talking about, Brent?
Yeah.
Okay. Or should I say Mr. Tuttles?
And then-
we've never got that far on the design.
And he said that if we had a document with these changes in it, and then had a vote on it prior to the town council meeting, then he'd be here to sign it. So anyway.
Well, we'll see about cleaning this up a little bit. I've got a meeting with our attorney on the weekend, and we'll
Sunday.
probably,
So anyway,
they usually are weekend things.
if
So,
I can help any further in that way,
Yeah.
it's
all right.
okay.
But I think if we clean this part of it up, I don't know if we need to clean up this language, you know, so we don't have this commitment on, because we're not gonna pay the developer or give him a credit either. The way it's worded is probably not proper. We have to credit the PID, so we won't get the credit, not the developer. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, we all understand that. Excuse me for getting that taken care of. Rod, would you, since the topic of discussion and possible action tonight is the Kenstal agreement, and you're deeply involved in that, would you give us basically a staff review of where that's at and what's going on?
Thank you. I'd be happy to. May I brief the board on a couple of other projects before we do that?
Yeah, would you mind coming up to the podium too, so we can have this on Zoom a little bit better for you? That magic camera will just zoom in on you, and that way we got it all.
Boy, that's scary for all involved.
Rod in 3D.
That is a scary thought. So let me just add one comment to the previous discussion about the Jepson Ranch piece. As you heard from Dale, our situation here has changed dramatically in the last year or so. And I think there are actually elements of the underlying development agreement that are not as valid as they were 2 years ago when that was signed. And so this document, I'm not a party to the details of it per se, but it is an amendment to the original development agreement. And all it does is changes certain paragraphs associated with that agreement. There may, in fact, and I'm just saying this, there may in fact be other elements of the agreement that are not being amended that are going to be significant issues to us today that were not issues at all to us a couple of years ago when this was originally agreed to, just as a point of reference.
Well, while you're on that subject, though, one that we didn't talk about is item number 2. We had in the original agreement a promise, I would say, or commitment to provide 360 acre feet of water.
Yeah.
At $4,000.
And I saw that got edited.
And that is out of here.
Right, because we cannot honor that.
Yeah.
And so it's probably been handled, but all I'm saying is
there anything else that you're aware of, though?
I'm not aware of anything else.
Okay, those were things that I zeroed in on.
Okay, so you're underway on that then.
Right, and it's off, and that's actually included in here. I just forgot to mention it because it's
good.
It doesn't show up in
good. Yeah, that's just so that's
And then the things like, the placement of the tank, where it's gonna be,
Right.
that's still all subject to the plating and where
Right.
you guys have full say over,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
when the water modeling comes in, does it give us the pressure we want, or is there a better location? We still have all the, ability to.
Great. That sounds
decide
good.
on that stuff.
That sounds good. All right. So moving on, I actually do want to brief the board on the ECWAG Canaan Springs project. We are well underway, as you know. The contractor has completed components of the spring portion of the project. The results are pretty good. Dale can cite more or less what we're getting, but it's 40 GPM plus or minus.
Say 40 to 45.
Yeah, that's not cup half full as much as we wanted, but it's a lot more than we were getting when the spring was down, and I think even previous to that. I think the contractor's done a nice job on that. We have already processed a process payment to the contractor. So all of the processes relating to the government grant and so forth are moving nicely along. I spoke to them earlier today. As you know, we had a bit of a stand down from this first initial portion of the project to coming back and connecting the springs directly through the pipeline component of the project. The negotiations, if you will, are really just change orders from the contract are underway, and we're just trying to determine how quickly we can get the contractor back on the project. The clock is ticking, even based on the change orders that we've already processed, and we'll be in liquidated damages with the contractor by the end of April. So we need to get them back on the mountain, and they're smiling, and there's no indication there's any problem with that. And there's really only about, I don't know, 45 days probably of pipeline work. So we have a decent little window, but it's not huge. So we're just trying to get after it and get the rest of that project knocked out. Consistent with that, we are in some conversations about expanding the scope of that project, given the problems we're having with source in Cedar Point and storage in Apple Valley, to possibly be a part of that particular project and help us to not have to go all the way back through the funding process. And nothing has been determined yet, but those discussions are underway. And I'm hoping that we get some promising outcomes from those discussions. We are under budget on the project by a significant amount, 20-something% or so, as it stands right now. There may be some real challenges with the pipeline as we come down that hillside that may overrun us and put us a little bit closer to budget. But at this point, even from a financial perspective, the project has gone really well.
Do you know the elevation of that tank over there?
The elevation of the tank, not off the top of my head. It's lower, it's about halfway in between. And I don't know if you.
About 6,000 feet.
It's
58.
5836.
No, really?
Yes,
That's way up the hillside then.
Yeah, we sit just below the bench, below Hubrecht's place.
I think that, well, I was talking about the Canaan tank. Is it?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the million
The
gallon.
million gallon tank, I think, is only about 5,200. According to
I think we're closer to
Google
6.
Live anyway. The map says about
Do
that.
you want to know the elevation of where I'm holding water in Canaan?
Right.
I don't know that one off the top of my head. I would guess we were around 5 to 5,100, probably somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So we're lower than Cedar Point and Gansing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
tank,
considerably
we will be
lower.
coming directly into that million gallon tank from the spring, and the spring is higher than the million gallon tank.
Okay.
The spring is approximately 600 feet higher than the many
Then
gallon tank.
then the other tank, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
You keep referring to a water line, and because I wasn't here until just recently, you're talking about the water line from the springs to the holding tank, or from the holding tank to somewhere else?
I'm talking about the water line that's in the contract that goes from the springs down through the wilderness area and actually stops before we get to the tanks.
The
Yeah.
holding tank,
Well, the storage tanks for the Canaan system.
that's what I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah, we won't be able to reach all the way down there with what we have under contract right now.
Estimated footage if you'll come up short,
Uh,
5,000, 2,000?
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up being a mile short of the tanks.
Wow.
Yeah, we're only putting in 3,600 feet of pipe, and it's winding down the canyon. We're just trying to get out of the wilderness area. And that wasn't a function of what we wanted to do. That's a function of what the government grant would allow us to do.
Right.
Yeah. Our original design took the pipeline all the way to the highway. But we kept getting it pushed back based on government requirements for that particular funding source. So we got what we could get in this particular funding source.
In a 3-second answer, we're gonna come up with money for the mile.
We're gonna have to put that as a capital improvement and install that with impact fees coming forward.
3 seconds, not 5 seconds. 3 seconds.
Sorry, 2 seconds over. All right, so now to the report at hand. We have been talking to Kinstall, which is the corporation that part of the Webb family controls, for a period of time, because the district and Kinstall have a number of mutually beneficial interests in the Canaan Springs and the development there. So a couple of the items that have brought us to this point where there's an agreement on your table is we actually share water rights with Kinstall in the additional springs that exist in the Canaan system. That was by design. They have some water rights
What does
there.
share mean?
They have water rights
And we have water rights.
and we have water rights.
But we don't really share. They
Sorry.
just have theirs and we have.
Thank
ours.
you.
Okay.
Point taken.
Well, yeah, no, I just want to clarify. I didn't.
Yeah, the
I
total
didn't
water rights,
clarify in this.
I would call it shared in the total water rights of the spring system, but yeah, we have our separate water rights and they have their separate water rights. So the idea there is to partner on how to develop those sources for the mutual benefit of both parties.
How many shares do they hold?
Well, it's water rights, and I even said shares. I gotta be careful about that. They're water rights. So the district has indeed 46 and a half or thereabouts water rights. And I think Kinstall at this moment has, and they can speak for themselves, but I think it's 24 acre feet. But there's obviously an opportunity to enhance those numbers as far as what we're actually pulling from the springs. Is that? So the other piece for why we're at the table is what's in this discussion on the agreement is an easement that, from my perspective as the district engineer, represents a better alignment than what we currently have at the highway. It'll be more efficient from a hydraulic perspective and also cheaper to build. So that's one of the benefits that the district gets out of this. The agreement also provides for an allocation of water as it becomes available once the SSD develops more spring flows. So in short, there are a total of 7 springs in this spring system, the Canaan Spring system. We have water rights associated with all of those. And again, not using the word share, but other parties also have water rights in most of those springs. Kenstal being the most significant player in the water rights on those springs. Several of those springs have not been further developed, and the district does anticipate taking the opportunity to go back up to the system and develop more springs to get greater capacities out of those for the community. That's a lengthy process, as we've learned, but it's our best source without. I mean, it's just that's just where we're at. We want to develop those sources to the maximum that we can, and so that's a capital facilities plan that's high on the agenda. The anticipated allocation will require the developments to meet water conservation criteria. So what we've discussed in relationship to this agreement is Kenstal and their agents are trying to get water allocated to their system so that they can support future development for those lands. That's not necessarily a mutual interest for us, other than to say we are going to be a party to providing that water along with the water rights they currently have in the system. So in order to maximize that agreement in terms of the number of connections that are available, we've been talking about deploying our water conservation policy, and we've been digging around for that, and we will have to revisit that as far as the actual document. But the essence of how it's been deployed in the past is in the agreement, and that is if they agree through their development process to the conservation program that we have outlined, which includes a curtailment of a certain amount of outdoor watering, and on the basis of the acreage, we can authorize through the will serve process approximately a half an ERC per buildable lot, which would allow them to build at least 2 single family residential units with 1 ERC. So in essence, what the agreement is in effect saying is we're going to get those benefits that I just articulated, and we're going to issue a will serve letter that allocates that water to up to 48 buildable units. We'll have some infrastructure activities that we have to do on our site that are not a part of this agreement. We'll have to put the second storage tank into service at some point in the near future. Again, that's something that we can monitor as we go forward, because 48 lots are not going to get built on tomorrow, but things are moving pretty fast as we're finding out. So we've got a couple of things we got to do on our end, but overall, the agreement from my perspective in terms of engineering review is favorable in regards to what we're getting from it. And I think we're bringing it to the table at this point mutually, actually, to have the board consider it. This is your first crack at it, so and I know it's been circulated, and it's a fairly simple agreement. So hopefully I'll sit down again and respond to any questions or anything that you have. And as you know, everyone is here to answer questions, including the folks from the Kenstal Corporation.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
So one of my first questions would be just that last comment you made, that we would have to build a tank for the 48 homes. And we're currently working with several different developments, and we're requiring them to provide that capacity. Why would we make an exception and build a tank?
Well, we're not going to build the tank. We already have it.
that's what I heard you say, that we would have to
Sorry.
build a tank for
I'm sorry.
48 homes.
Thank you for asking, because we have the additional tank.
And
So
so they
it's
would have
already in the
to,
system, but it's currently not integrated into the.
I guess what I
system.
was getting at is then they would have to go through a normal plat process and provide water modeling, which could show
Yeah.
or couldn't show that we need additional capacity
No,
based
no.
on.
Sorry, I'm not interested in opening that aspect of it at all. We already have the tank. And all I'm saying is, we just have to put that in service before the end of this agreement.
All right, so we already have an additional tank
We have the.
that we're not
additional tank.
using.
Yes, we bought a 100,000 gallon tank and we bought a 50,000 gallon tank. The 50,000 gallon tank that we bought, had been out of service for about 20 years. The paint's all chipped off of it. We just need to put it in and sandblast it. The hatch and lid, the witch hat that's on the top needs to be switched to a candy cane to bring us into compliance, and then we're good to go.
All right, back to what I was saying though, it would seem to me that we would still have to pass the muster of, if the subdivision she has down there decided to be activated, that we would still have to jump through a hoop for the state of Utah that did have water modeling that would demonstrate that even with the activation of that tank, that we would have sufficient capacity and all that.
Correct.
Sound reasonable?
Right.
If that didn't happen and we needed an additional tank, it would be on the developer at that time to build that, not the district.
Correct.
Does everybody understand that? Sound reasonable? Okay.
We have a 155,000 gallon tank ready also.
You have what?
We have
It's-
155,000.
And given that we only have 15 connections, it's probably enough. I'm not an
Well,
engineer to figure that out, but.
the math would suggest that on certain criteria, we have sufficient supply for the 48 plus the 15. The issue starts to become, can you effectively fight a fire and some of that kind of stuff. And that's why we're saying at some point in the future, we're going to be bringing that additional tank that we already own into compliance with the state's requirements and get it online.
Yeah. Let me clarify something really quick with the tank. So like I said, we bought a 100,000 gallon tank, and we bought a 50,000 gallon tank. When I got my sanitary survey done last year, the beginning of last year, we had to actually get a letter from the fire chief saying that he was okay with that 100,000 gallon tank being in service, because for the 14 homes that we have over in Canaan, for firefighting purposes, we have to have 110,000 gallons of storage. And so I just wanted everybody in the room to know that we're actually under by 10,000 gallon now, which equates that 50,000 gallon tank to only 40,000 if you follow me.
But if you had 48 homes, it seemed like our storage would be less than is required for water monitors, but not that
I would say that off the top of my head also.
Yeah, okay. And the other, since it's kind of in that same vein, I'm curious if the 40-some gallons that we get out of the spring currently right now with the rehab and everything else done, I thought we were netting much more than that.
That's one spring.
Yeah,
That's just one spring. We still have another spring that's producing probably about 70 gallons a minute.
Okay, great. I appreciate that because I want to know how are we going to help we only get 40 gallons.
Something that was a
Combined
liquid.
in theory, we should have around 110 gallons
All right, awesome.
a minute. And that's what I was saying earlier, is that
All right, awesome.
that's almost to the tune of 53 million gallons annually that
Yeah,
comes out of
awesome.
that.
All right, thanks for the clarification on that.
Go back to your math a moment. How many gallons of storage do you need for the current 14 homes?
110.
110.
So you're roughly 9,000 gallons a door.
Say that again.
You're roughly 9,000 gallons a door, 8,000.
Yes.
So with another 50 houses, you would need another 40,000 gallons, 400,000 gallons.
Did you say 400,000?
No, it's you had it right in the first place. It's going to equate to about 40,000 gallons.
With 110,000 gallons is fireproof, isn't it?
It's fireproof
Yes,
plus
yes.
a little bit of reserve for
So
reuse, which
1,000
is
gallons a minute for 2 hours is 120,000 gallons.
right. This is the requirement in this case is 1,000 gallons per 1 hour.
And then your 4 to 8.
For fire flow, to be clear on that, fire flow for Apple Valley, I just cleared this with Chief to figure out what we were doing over here with this storage over here. He expects 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yep.
Which is 120,000 gallons.
So I'm gonna let you answer the question, how many additional gallons you need for fire flow to service these 48 homes?
The fire flow is a function of one event. So adding an additional home or 48 homes does not increase the fire flow requirement unless the building criteria changes. So,
Meaning commercial or something.
correct. So what we're actually dealing with the 48, the increase of the 48 homes is just the domestic use. Because we're having to get to whatever the fire requirement is. And then on top of that, the domestic use requirement under the state requirement.
And the domestic use is the 400 gallons indoor, and it's another 400 outdoor. But if you're running zero skate, then
Right.
it's 400 gallons. So you can divide.
That's incorrect. It's not 400 gallons.
It's 800.
It's anything outside the door, even a spigot requires outdoor water in it, it goes to 800 gallons.
Well, then
Even if you, and any state water engineer will tell you, if you're only using that spigot to wash your car 5 times a year, we're okay with it. But if you're putting any kind of outside usage, including just watering your horse, not horses, it still requires 400 gallons.
Okay.
Or
Total.
additional.
Because it's 4 plus 4. Right.
So you take your fire flow storage and then divide 800 per connection, that's the volume you need.
Let me change my question to you. Out of the 110,000 gallon storage, there is a limit by the number of residents you can service out of that, correct?
Yes.
Would you know what that limit is by chance? How many homes you can put on that system?
I would say with that, we're going by 110,000 gallons. Being for comfortably, I would say that I could probably have 50 homes, 55 homes on that 110,000.
Well, you're gonna put that other 50 in there as well, right?
No, we're talking 110, are we?
I'm 110.
Right.
So really just another 50,000 gallon tank really takes care of fire flow.
Yes. And that's what was told to me on my sanitary, yes.
All right. Everyone listening who doesn't have your knowledge, I want them to be able to understand that that's what we're talking about.
No worries. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. The only other statement I would make is your allocation on here of 2 units per acre is for indoor usage only. If you come in with a master plan to the city council and you don't have that provision in your application, you're gonna run up to an uphill battle.
Well, just a pre-meeting, so to speak, that I had with Rod. The will serve letter that we would hand out on these 48 homes is for indoor watering only. And that sounds kind of crazy, but you have a 2 acre lot and say that I'm not gonna water anything outside seems a little bit, ridiculous. But there's limits that we can put on the meter that say this conservancy agreement water meter would be that you can only use X number of gallons. And when someone's using twice that, we have the ability to shut that meter off and to make them at that point bring in more water. And they also have the option of bringing in more water because they are going to have horses or gardens or whatever else. And they can take that half ERC and then double it with another half or full share, whatever. And they can bring that in at the time of to upgrade that will serve letter to watering outside as well. And so they do have that option. It's not like the people buying that house or lot are going to be completely locked in where they can't have that. It's just they would have to pony up the extra couple $1,000 for a half a share, basically. And then we could convert that will serve letter into a full will serve that's indoors and outdoors.
Correct.
So I feel a little bit better about that 0.5 ERC, knowing that we have some controls in there and that we're able to upgrade that at some point.
And while I don't really like Dale, because he
Because of the name.
because he grows a better beard than me, I don't want to see him turn into a water czar where he's going to go around babysitting every house. Hope you water your garden.
I'm glad you support me.
You know, we don't want to get into that. You're not a, you know.
Well, it becomes a billing thing at that point. When we're billing and obviously drive by and they've got a garden and, you know, they're against the, you know, conservation agreement that's built into the building of the house. And, you know, I know it's gonna create a nightmare for all of us, but I can see where there's at least some stopgaps there. There are a couple things that I have a problem with in this. One of them is on item number 2. It says the SSD shall assign to Ken Stoll rights of access under the BLM wilderness land lease agreement, which we actually have no control over what we can do, and I'm not sure why we would agree to that anyway. So I have a problem with that one myself. If anyone wants to speak to it, or I can move on to the next problem for me. So I'll just pause for a minute in case anyone wants to speak to that.
I share that concern, but did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I share that concern. I think there's a way to get there. I just don't think this language is the right language to get us there because we can't dictate to the BLM what some third party can do. So if we can just find the proper language, I think we can get there.
And even if we could, would we want to? Because that puts our easement in jeopardy where a private party, so to speak, has the ability to go up there and piss off BLM that, you know, in some way that jeopardizes our ability to manage our system and just in some way. I might be overthinking it, but I can see where that would be problematic.
Well, the first thing I'm gonna ask her for is when this is executed, is can I wire easement right away so I can take my dozer up there and get to my property?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. I can tell you that
Yeah.
on her behalf already.
Yeah, I just don't have a big deal because it's wilderness land.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, I have a problem with that. The other one that I have a problem with was number 7 under contingencies, where we're agreeing to purchase, how should I say, unallocated acre feet of the springs, fair market value of 10,000 per acre foot, and or greater if the fair market value is something else. I don't understand why we would agree to this at all.
I'm gonna kind of address that for just a second, throw my 2 cents in there.
Yeah.
The verse is actually predicated upon what if the SSD were to take action to sell or transfer the ownership to a third entity, primarily Washington County Conservancy District.
Well, they could also include the town of Valley.
It says all parties. This is primarily, it's referring to all parties, but it does specifically state out Conservancy District. Water is a commodity. I think we all agree with that. It can be bought and sold in the open market. It can be transferred in and out. I think what I am guessing your objection here, or your objection is not your objection, your objective, wow, is to protect your water rights. Because they are a commodity, you can pull them in and out of the water district anytime you want. So if we were to do that and it went to a third party of any nature, then this would be assumable and transferable. They would have to honor and support her. So there would be no practical need for us to buy the water in order for her to get her service. So
because the will serve letter, and I
wasn't heritable. So my question is, why do you want us to do it?
And I also wasn't clear, is this 10,000 for the future possible shares, or is this the 24 that's we're agreeing to taking?
Three items. Number 1, when Kensal helped hold that water today that didn't come in, is because they weren't in favor of the sale to the district in the first place. They're protecting their equity interest.
I missed some of your words.
Can you come up to the podium too? Sorry.
Okay. Representative Kensal.
Your name?
Representative Kensal.
Your name?
Dennis Parker. From the beginning, since it's been brought to our attention, since we worked with the family for over 30 years, developing the subdivisions and the existing springs and the tanks, it's been brought to my attention that her side of the family was not agreeable to the sale to the district. And they had their own interest in the springs, and now they're being told they can't go protect the water right.
They
Because,
can't,
okay, that's just
they
number
can't
one.
what?
They can't go up and develop and protect their water right. You guys are doing that. They want it, they want their equal share in the interest. That's why that item too. Next item. That from the beginning, all of the water that you now own and she owns from day one with Merlin Webb's Trust Water Company that you purchased, all that water was earmarked for all their land. They got 600 acres of land. Now they're being told they can't develop it. So she's in support with the district to develop those springs collectively together.
Okay, third item? Is that 3?
They're number 3, they're in it collectively together.
Okay.
Anything else, Ken?
This is a delicate conversation, and this is, it's a slippery slope to have, and whatever is stated up here, first and foremost, please don't let anything I say, I'm not gonna speak for them, rub the wrong way, okay? I'm not trying to be argumentative in any sense, I'm just trying to get a grasp on how we collectively go forward, so I will apologize in advance. But I'm gonna step back and answer your statement from my perspective, not his or his over there. While I empathize or sympathize, I can't empathize, but I can sympathize with what went on with the family structure. But I'm not here to inherit or correct any wrongdoings in their family structure. However, what I on this one portion of the board can do is try to help her find a solution that can resolve that for her as long as it is not at our expense. And that's where I feel like I'm having trouble with section 7 is I'm having to, if it were just me on this board by myself, having to pay for those someone else's sins. And I don't want to do that. I want to find her a solution and I want to find her a way to move forward. I just don't want to pay for that sin, Dennis. And I feel like we're doing that just a little bit.
One more thing that I, in that same vein, I'm curious about is if we only have 24 water rights and we're issuing a will serve letter on those 24, what other interest in water rights are there on the table that we have besides what we're issuing a will serve letter?
And I'm going to answer that so that I make sure I understand it. When you develop the further springs, Rod, additional water rights will be generated for both that party as well as our board.
No, water rights are gonna be a separate piece. But as we develop the springs and actually get the wet water and can quantify it, we would be in a position to enhance our water rights holdings.
That's what I said.
Or just maintain what's already there with the water rights that Ken still has and what we already have in terms of total production. So it actually just really, it's a function of how much water we're actually able to get out of the ground.
So I understand. So if we develop one more of the springs, that in some way, let's quantify it and say that it's another 50 gallons a minute. Does that sound reasonable? And that turns into how many water rights for them based on 50 gallons a minute. How many of those 50 gallon minutes are theirs?
So it varies between each spring, who's got what water right. And so that allocation will vary.
Okay, let's talk about one that we have rights to.
Yes.
Just pick one, A, B, C, D, or E, F, or G. A has, which would be the next spring we would develop. We have how many, they have how many? Give me a ballpark idea.
Well, the spring we're currently developing right now,
No,
we
next
have,
spring, please.
I don't have good numbers on it.
45 from 24,
We do.
so it's about a third.
About a third? So if we go to a new spring, then, so there are actually additional, besides the 24, there's additional water rights that we are talking about. Is that right?
No, that's the water rights, 45 and 24.
Right.
Approximately. And she basically represents a third of the ownership of the spring.
And every deed goes to every spring.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Every deed has rights in every
spring.
spring. Yes, and ours.
That's the part we're trying to
Every
clarify.
spring.
We have one spring that's set aside that already has 45 and 24 acre feet tied to it.
No, 45 to all springs.
It's
All springs. Every deed goes to every spring.
So,
And they have 2 deeds and I have 2 deeds.
okay.
I'm getting more confused.
hang on. Arbitrarily, we're gonna work off the number 50 gallons per minute. If we develop that all 7 springs, generate 350 gallons per minute, that's far greater than the 45 and 44.
Well, it's a different number, but yeah, I'm following your logic.
Who owns the balance of the water, the flowable, drinkable water?
You would have access to developing 2/3 of that.
Correct, and that was
Right.
what our, so it's 2/3 and 1/3.
Right.
So she has the ability based on 350 arbitrary number, but 350 gallons, she would be entitled to roughly 115 gallons.
Yes.
Okay, which is equivalent of another roughly 80 to 90 connections, correct?
And she has the land.
Okay.
She's in
Sorry,
support
Rod?
of the development agreement with you guys.
Yeah,
So does that help clarify?
Uh-huh.
I can get a board, draw a chart.
No, I understand it, but it kind of goes against what I thought water rights were about, where you have this piece of paper that says you own this many gallons or this much, one share or whatever,
Right.
water right, paper right. And just trying to figure out how, if we only have 24, how that automatically increased by 100 when we develop all the springs.
yeah, it doesn't. You still have to perfect the water rights for whatever additional beyond the existing water rights you have. And that's why I made the statement just a few minutes ago. It all depends on really how much wet water actually gets produced. Nobody knows that yet.
Yeah.
And so we're still just talking about
I get that part, but
possibility.
we have in number 7 that we're paying 10,000 per acre
Yeah.
for what we've already assigned a will serve letter on.
Well, she has buy for that spring water, 10,000 acre foot today.
I understand that, but we're giving her connections, which is cash value.
That's correct. And in case you guys,
I missed your words there for a second.
in case the board, or the district resolves, she just wants to make sure her land and water is protected. So that she gets it back,
Well,
she already
we'll supply
knows that the value is worth 10,000 an acre.
Okay. But if we give her 48 connections, she paid, that water paid for.
You're not giving them to her, she's giving you the water for you can release water back to her under your format and.
To the equivalency of 48 connections.
Yes,
Okay.
to begin.
What they're saying is if you, the district resolves or dissolves or goes over to the facility district or whatever, and they haven't pulled their connections out yet or have connections, then they want it to be, I guess if you could put in there, they could pull their money or their water right now.
They can do that anyway.
They can do that anytime.
They can do that anyway.
That's
That's why I'm,
completely true.
it is completely true.
No.
And I verified it today. It is
No.
100% true.
Well,
Okay, let's
And I'm
talk
gonna
about
diff-
it.
I'm not gonna argue this with you.
Well, hang on a second though. But for clarification though, if we've taken these water rights and we've issued a will serve letter against them, those are ours. They don't
Yeah,
ever
they're
come
deeded.
back.
Correct.
They're locked down.
And
They
don't
can't
ever-
take them back.
I understand that. We're
You
talking
just
about,
said you could take them back, and you cannot. Once we have a deed and it's unobligated through the bank, it becomes a deed ownership of the district, and it's not subject to anything associated with it.
I agree.
I don't want this agreement to get killed because of something, a misunderstanding like that. Those waters will be ours, period, once they are completely perfected, meaning the water right itself, and we've met the obligation of the connection. Those become deeded water rights. But the transaction will include these water rights going into the bank, and that portion of the agreement does protect, to install. They have the right to pull water rights out of the water bank until they're completely unobligated. But I think that's a reasonable security.
Let me refresh what
Yes.
I said first.
Okay,
What I said first was that if we issue the will serve letter to her, then we have in a sense bought her water at that point. Okay? Disagree?
Not agree.
no,
You don't agree?
I do agree.
Okay? So we bought, so then why would we agree to pay her $10,000 beyond that point? Is my question to you.
That's why I'm confused too.
If the district hasn't fulfilled their obligations with actual connections, and those are sold to somebody else,
they don't honor those connections, there's gotta be a way for her to get back value.
Now you're talking about a liquidated damage issue, because if we give you a will-serve letter, Dale
That was,
just walked through the issues over Cedar Point and identified he can only go 18 more units before we get more water. Dale's not gonna hold the
Understand that.
issue.
but when we did the Cedar Point, we handed them will serve letters at the time that they phoned up the water.
We didn't.
And so, anyway, so I,
Dale Harrison did. How hard to say that? Dale Harrison did.
well, let me just finish the statement that they bring in these will serve letters that are dated, from, 2015, and they hand them to us for, one of their
This
bills.
paragraph doesn't talk about handing them to you, it talks about handing them to a third party, that's all it deals with, is if you guys aren't around to honor the agreement, she's gotta have some protections. Now, if the, County Water Conservancy District comes in, I'm assuming they would assume all those obligations and still allow her to get connection, but that's not a guarantee at this point.
Well, we're gonna give them the
And
will
if you
serve
guys
letter.
go bankrupt, there's no guarantee that she gets that out. This is purely protection. If the district can't perform, that she's got a remedy. That's it. I can give you a perfect example. The LeBaron family that held the water rights in Quail Creek Reservoir before they built the lake. They didn't have no protection. They not only lost all their water rights, they came back and they were suing them. And they said, okay, we'll let you have the seat that our friend down that has the house at the below. Oh, Ron came back and says, that wasn't your authority. You don't get the seat. So they screwed them, they got screwed twice. No protection. I give you 10 more.
Again, I don't wanna pay for somebody else's sins, Dennis, so I'm trying to find a way to deal with this and this alone. So I appreciate the example, but
These two people have come to an agreement, which has been very difficult, because she wasn't gonna put that water in there. They finally come together this week, so they're trying to put this draft together that works for everybody. Correct?
Yes.
A week ago, she didn't say that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's, you're putting, us in position that if the town, brought the district in as a water company, then we would have to write her a check for $10,000 per acre foot at closing. And she still has those,
No, only if
She
you don't,
still
even if they
has-
don't perform.
she
If they
still
don't
has
perform.
those, I don't know that the verbiage is right for that, so.
well, that's good. Let me read that, because it says that the acre foot shall have the right to require payment in full if that were to occur. And I think that's where the hair is getting stuck, Raj, is it's mandating that we give her a $10,000 check should it go to a third party. And we're saying there's a way to get there, it's just not making it a mandate.
I don't want her to, get screwed in the process. There's no doubt about that. And so if that's the goal, we can have the attorney look at the language and try and write that in where there's that protection. But that having a will serve letter in hand means that, you can go to that. Now, if the new person you handle will serve letter is the Conservancy District and, you're afraid of them not honoring that, I can understand that. So anyway, we'll look at, that with, the attorney, try to get better clarification.
Same thing happened. And the $10,000 figure is not an arbitrary figure. That's what you paid for Canaan Springs, spring water.
From the family trust.
Yep, yes. It's the same price. That $10,000 number came from him.
Raj, all I'm, I don't know what you.
And I see
never
what
know.
you're saying with that language.
I
You
never
can soften
know what
that
you're
language.
saying.
It's only if they deny her service
Yeah.
that she has the right to demand that. And if we need to change the language to.
Or we return.
So you're saying that we.
Or return,
Per acre
yes.
foot?
We're in agreement with that. We're just trying to, we don't have.
You mind if I revisit
We're
that
trying to come and what works for both sides.
Go ahead.
But yeah, the whole purpose is for her protection if she doesn't get what she bargains
Yeah.
for with you guys today.
Yeah, we got that.
Okay.
But back to the 10,000 and, that's what we paid for it. Is this, we paid what, 400,000 or something?
480,000.
So,
475,000.
and so we got no hardware out of that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
And so that's in there too. And so why would we pay for the hardware twice?
But she had hardware when what you bought is when that took her line to her subdivision.
No, what I'm saying is.
Yeah, you bought the hardware that feeds her subdivision.
That's my point, is we've already bought the hardware. Why would we
But
pay
that was part of the rub,
10,000
that's part of the
again?
rub, why she didn't want to do this easement, because she already had a line going to her subdivision.
You're not answering my question though, Dennis. I can see your lips
Okay.
moving, but you're not answering my question. So let's better understand what we're talking about. The 10,000 that we paid per acre foot, if you want to call it that, including hardware, that hardware is ours now.
Yep.
And so now we're only buying water rights. Why would we pay her 10,000 for only the water rights? We already own the hardware.
I can answer that.
I can too, I can answer for you.
Rod was the one that told us that that purchase was solely for the water and the sources, that the hardware is not gonna be used, it's worthless. The value is all in the water.
Okay.
So that's where the 10,000 came from.
That's not my reason for paying it. And I appreciate what Rod had to say, but that, my reason for paying would be because she's throwing in an easement right away. And I think she's being more than fair. I think she's doing what she needs to do on her side. And I think we need to do what we need to do on our side. So it's a win for both of us.
It sounds like we should
Just
polish
that
this language
verbiage
up a little
just
bit.
needs to be softened up a little bit, Raj, that's all. Because it mandates that we, right now.
I've been asking for your input for 2 months on this document.
I just
We
barely
could have
got
got
it.
it.
I just barely got
That's
it
not my
last night,
fault.
maybe this morning. I can't remember. I think it was 4 in the morning I saw it or something. So I've had it one whole day.
We were told a few weeks ago, everybody had it.
I got it at 3:30 this afternoon.
I haven't had it.
We said that
This
We've
one,
been asking for it.
you have the one that we rewrote.
Okay.
What's that one to you,
It-
brother?
it-
No,
it-
this is
it doesn't
document
matter.
number 4 that we've been working on for 2 months.
Guys, look, hey,
Everybody
this
knows
is,
where I am.
we're not impeaching Trump here, okay? Can we just back up? We can still move this agenda forward and move
Right.
it on to city council, contingent upon us addressing some of this verbiage so we can not hang you up. So we
Right.
don't need to go through all this.
Right,
Challenges.
Let's go back to number 2. Are you okay if that gets dropped off?
Yeah.
Because we can't agree to that because it's not in our power to do it.
Raj, you hear what he's asking? We can't dictate what the BLM does, so item number 2, we don't have to do.
Yeah, that's the BLM.
Item number 2 requires us to extend, we must convey the easement described in the exhibit B to Kenstal rights of access under the BLM wilderness. We can't assign that, we can't legally, I'm not saying legally, but.
Based on meeting whatever BLM requirements are. The wilderness is accessible to everybody without vehicles.
I understand, but we don't, I'm gonna use the word legal, and I hate to use that word because I'm not an attorney, but I'm saying we don't have a legal authority to issue her access to the BLM.
You have the assignment of the lease. You can let people come on and use whatever you have under a lease document by permission. We're trying to create a partnership with the Springs. That was
By permission, I changed it.
So are you reading the entire number 2? Are you reading the entire?
Yep.
Sentence?
Yeah, I am.
Can
Because
I clarify something with this easement?
No.
Is this,
it's that exhibit.
I know you don't like you.
is the easement for pipeline access or is it for spring access?
She just wants to make sure that she is protected if the district dissolves or somebody else comes in.
She wants the easement put in the pipeline deal.
I just want to make it clear that the sources can only be accessed by the public water system that actually owns it. So I want to just make that clear that when it comes to access to the springs, the only people that are going to have the access to the springs are us.
That's what I said, we don't have the authority to issue that.
Yeah, okay.
So,
That's why we can't do any of
Yeah.
number 2.
and that's what I'm trying to explain to Rod, is that easement is only granted to this body for the usage of this body's pipeline.
If she's a partner with you, then she should have that same
I'm
right.
not a partner with us.
Yes, she is. They're going over. Huh? She's a partner in the government of
I'm
those
not
springs.
sure she can legally be a partner. I'm not sure you can legally be a partner with a public entity. I think you can have an agreement, I'm not sure you can be a public, you can be a
Well,
partner.
like I said, let's put in language that says whatever right is able to be given under BLM regulations,
If any.
then that's what you're giving her.
So let's-
And I'll go find out how to produce that.
So and that's what I say, let's move it forward by understanding we're gonna have to adjust this.
We won't delete it right now, we'll solve it.
If you can solve it, we'll send it on, but if you can't, we'll have to delete it because we can't assign it. We'll certainly look at it, see if you can come up with language to make it work. Anything else in this document?
No, I
Mayor does.
I think this whole thing has been misunderstood as far as easements in and out. When we first got it, we were given a couple of keys and told that Dale could go up there, I could go up there, and if anybody else went up there, they would be by our invitation. And we were to make a phone call in advance of that before we went onto the property.
And that's all Roger's asking for. You
Yeah,
just
we understand that.
Well, that was to go on private property of Webb's. And then once we get up to the wilderness, that's a whole different thing. Because we first were told that we were gonna have to put the thing in with mules and hand tools. We worked on this thing forever, trying to get a tractor, to permission to get that up there, so.
So when it comes to permission on that piece of property, folks, the way that I look at that is that we don't own that piece of property. I would hate for someone to give permission to go onto a piece of property of mine that I did not own. We just have an easement to get on that road, just to go straight where our pipe is. And I have actually never been out of that road. I've honored that the whole time. That's what keeps Kurt as a good neighbor. So I've always said to folks, I cannot give you permission for that. If you would like Kurt's number, I can give it to you. He is the only guy that can give you the permission for that. I don't feel that it's our property to give permission for.
And as you stated, it's not a place you want anybody besides yourself, or someone from the district up there messing around.
On our sources, exactly. The states won't allow that. That's what I want to make. That's not just a Dale Harris request. That becomes a public water source. It's only accessed by qualified people.
Well, if Roger wants to take that on and see where it goes, I'm fine with that.
Well, I think that's something simple. I agree with you 1,000%. And from the standpoint that as a district, but Dale's a landowner and developer, if your name is Kendra Webb, and those were your springs.
I want access to
Your
it.
spring water. I want to get a point across there. If you were Kendra today,
I would be better looking than I am.
you, if you put yourself where she's sitting right now today, but you were really Kendra, what would you put in that document? I'm only asking you because you're a landowner and developer. And so would she.
I would want as much access as I could get to my water sources independent of default. But this isn't addressed default. This addresses.
We've talked all over town that,
Dennis,
You
you
guys-
asked me what I would do. Let me answer, okay?
thank you.
If it were in default, I would want some remedy to get access to the springs, absolutely. But this isn't about default. This is about independent transfer to a third party.
I'm willing to add upon default.
Yeah, we're agreed.
I think Roger said it earlier, the mayor said it earlier, Harold said it, and I said it. We don't have a problem with protecting her rights and getting her to the water to whatever legal extent we're able to do. Let's go work on the verbiage so we can move this forward. In the meantime, Roger can work on the verbiage so you can get it back to council for more to be approved.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
And if it finds out that you can only go 2 feet off of Highway 59, that's as far as you can go.
Basically, Roger inserts under default on that.
And we'll find out
No, it's not that
what the
simple.
procedure would be with the BLM to then be able to give us some rights, some permission to access.
Some kind of agreement with the
It really
private party.
between
Flag.
The document itself has no limitations on its usage. It's a lease, which gives you basically the right to use the land as needed.
And if it's possible, we can, under the right verbiage, grant that to her. I don't see why we wouldn't do it, but if we can. move
You're
this-
shaking your head no, Mayor. Are you not in agreement with that?
No, I'm listening to Dale. And Dale's telling me that no one else can be up there messing with us.
And if that turns out to be the case, Roger says that's okay.
Yeah,
What we're
gonna
gonna
find
do-
out if that's the right answer.
We're gonna go find out just how far they can go. And as I said, if it turns out that he can only go 2 feet off of Highway 59, and that's all she has to go.
And then we're also talking about giving them rights to apparently go on Kirk's property, which I don't think we have.
Oh, we'll work that out.
It doesn't address.
I don't need to go on Kurt.
It only addresses the BLM problem.
So Roger, you're the
I
man.
don't need to Kurt. I can do it.
I'm okay with what Dale just laid out.
All right, okay.
I can do it.
Can I be clear one more time about the source?
No,
Don't think.
I That's twice you've asked that, twice you got the same answer.
Whether we own it or somebody else owns it, as long as that is a public water source, no one will have access to that except for qualified personnel, qualified by the state. That's just period. That's the.
Well,
the
Roger
state
will
is-
clarify that.
And today, Kendra could go up there right now because she has a right in those springs. She's giving that up by deeding the water to you. She's asking for a reasonable access to be able to just see how things are going. When you say you finish improving a spring, I'd like to go up and see what it looks like. See if it's really
I would
improved.
love to take you up. And when you
No,
put
it's me
it,
you're taking out.
when you put it in that scenario, not a problem. If Kendra wants to.
I'm not trying to create a problem. I'm just trying to give Kendra this peace of mind.
If Kendra wants
To know what's going on.
This one beaten down, okay?
We're good.
Go on.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else in there,
Board.
Harold?
No, I'm good on that part.
I've been there. I don't know if I want to go back.
I think that they can,
I'm gonna clarify though, real quickly, Roger, on section 7, that we're gonna take out the 10,000 acre foot. If something were to transfer to a third party and she's not serviced, then she's gonna retain the right to pull the
Yeah,
water.
either fair market value or
She can pull her water back.
pull them out.
We'll deed it back to her.
Yeah, I don't have a problem
I
with
think-
fair
I
market
think
value,
we
because
have-
it'll be higher by then.
I think we would have to
Exactly.
agree, Rod, clarify, but I think we'd have to agree in the agreement to for quick claim deed back on the water right. She can't just come in and take it. It would require us to transfer that.
Yeah.
So we have, that needs to be part of that.
I'm fine with that.
Because if she gets $10,000,
And that would be the,
I want 10%.
The church gets it, doesn't it?
Oh, there you go. I got it. There you go.
okay, gentlemen, do you have anything else that, you wanted to discuss before we let the legal folks take a look at it? I noticed on the easement, we don't have a legal description. We need,
It's paper trails to speak. Next day, so I'll have that for you.
We also don't have Schedule D that lays out the connection policy, so I need that as well.
Okay, at this stage then, can we move it forward to council?
I don't think we quite can because we don't have the rest of it, but we can call a meeting. Once you get these documents, there's no reason we can't, do an afternoon session and then call a meeting.
Next time we just keep it here and work on the
I mean,
details.
literally, with 24 hours notice, when we have this, we can say, let's have a meeting tomorrow.
We just want our parties
It's
on.
not that hard to do this.
Might take 48 to golf.
It's rain tomorrow.
and where we're at on this is that
don't need this.
Go buy groceries in the rain, don't you?
that Roger has the easement issue to work on and,
The other policy is the other item, Mr. Chairman, that we didn't have in here that we need to, I think, make part of this is what that conservation policy is. I'd like to see that. I'd like to
That's
see
Schedule
that.
D.
I'd like to see that in writing, and maybe that's even a exhibit on here that this is what we're agreeing to.
Right.
Is that reasonable?
Yep.
So we've got to find out as well and make it part of this.
I have a question for you, Gary. How come you never speak up?
No, well, a lot of times I have questions and then all of a sudden you guys pop them out and I go, this is great. I mean, I can sit back, it's like watching a football game.
Next meeting, your job is
Arguing with the refs.
I just remembered on wilderness areas, the city of Hurricane couldn't get their water off the wet sandy up on there when Clinton made that all the wilderness area. They kicked them right off and that water goes halfway down that mountain. I've been up there a lot on horses and it drops right to the ground. They can't get up there to grab it. So the wilderness area is really a tricky place, but like I told everybody, every wilderness area in this world, in our world, I can access on my horse. I just saddle up and I go in. As long as I'm not on a bicycle or a motorized vehicle or anything else, I can get old scooter and we're in and we're gone. His scooter. Yeah, he's pretty good. Old Scoot, he's a good pony.
okay, so where are we on this? Everybody understands their homework assignment? And then when we get together, let's talk to each other via phone or whatever, and when it all comes together, hopefully in the next few days, we'll
We'll have
schedule
our,
another meeting and put this thing together.
we'll have our part done, and so we'll just,
Email us,
with your permission, we let you get on the agenda for the next one, we do that as a deadline to get it on there.
Or can we make a special meeting?
Yes, you can go.
we need a special meeting, I don't want to do that.
You can
Yeah, no,
definitely-
wait,
Sorry, Daryl.
there's not much left.
That's a month.
But if you'll get that to me too, I'd like to have.
No, I mean, you can get it.
Time to read.
The next meeting's a month away.
So Rob, we can do this by Monday, Tuesday.
Well,
We'll have to chase the, conservation.
I'll get it tomorrow, tell me where to go.
Washington DC.
I'll be
Yeah.
there.
Right in the agreement.
So it's not part of the ordinances of the town.
It's not already part of the
Yeah,
order.
it wasn't in the policy when I looked it up, but it does exist.
That's what I thought it was part of
We
the
don't have to
ordinance
make it
currently, and I couldn't find it.
And I couldn't find it.
I do, I'll,
So that's why I'm having an issue with it.
Okay, we'll track it down.
I think the way we
We
can
can find
plan is that.
Yeah, we'll
Okay, just
communicate with each other and
We'll
go along.
just
Just to clarify.
and screw these in.
Right.
Yeah.
Clarify Harold's statement. Roger's the only one with job site. Okay.
we don't have to.
Dale doesn't have anything to do with Adam on that deal.
And we are prepared to bring another 100 acre feet into the district to help this situation. So we're talking about 124 acre feet, be treated as the same.
Well, let's not go.
But I'm just saying that's right here today, sitting in this room. We knew this was gonna come.
Not on our agenda.
We knew you didn't have the water. We're trying to ensure that Kendra can go home, and she goes home and reports to Kensville, she's leaving tomorrow morning. She-
Well, I won't, if this can be done fast, I'll get this. I'd
But
like
that's what I
to-
was told today, that you were leaving, so.
Well, I didn't know what was gonna happen at the meeting.
Well,
Like everything is.
we,
She needs to report to
we
the-
all have our work assignment. Anybody else have any comments? Thank you. Comment,
All right.
move that we adjourn.
I don't-
Thank you.
Thank you for everybody's
Yeah,
time
thank
to
you.
try and work
Thank
this
you,
out. I
everyone.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. You're done.
Thank you. Hey, Dale. Any questions?
I just want.
I gotta go work on my complaint.
Oh, yeah, I did.
I was wondering, I haven't seen it before, I don't know.
Two of the horses, I'm here.
You're on the second.
They're like for, water.
Son and daughter.
17 gallons a minute.